Okay, great. We're now live streamed. Excellent. Welcome everybody to the first official Oversight Committee hearing on personnel, Oversight Subcommittee on Personnel hearing of the 2026 session. We're going to be considering one bill today, that is House Bill 141, to grant graduate assistants the rights to collectively bargain. So just real quick, I'm going to go through the bill. We'll do any questions, and then we will hopefully take a vote to advance the bill out of subcommittee. So this is a bill that the General Assembly has considered for some time before. It's new to our committee. It's pretty straightforward. Basically, would just add graduate assistants to the statutory list of allowable classifications within the university system that are able to collectively bargain. Doesn't guarantee that they will. They will still have to organize and go through the usual process of forming a union, but it will give them the ability, and then obviously will allow them to collectively bargain then with the individual institutions where they form their bargaining units. The bill is in the same posture that it passed out of the House of Delegates in 2019, and then we also passed it in the same posture last session in 2025. So pretty straightforward bill. Any questions? Any discussion? Yeah, excuse me, Delegate Wilson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So there's another bill that's similar to this with the I'm sorry, my brain's like adjunct professors. All right.
Correct.
My question, so I understand that it's permissive, but all jokes aside, obviously, let me just get to it like this. We have to make a conscious decision as a state with this bill and that other bill. If we're going to send the message out, we're most likely going to increase the cost of education in Maryland. It is what it is. I've said before in the House many times, follow your treasure and find your heart. But my issue, I also have a girl that's graduating from Hopkins, another one graduating high school. And I know just how expensive, and I mean overly expensive, even state schools are right now. So my concern is, I don't know how many people this can touch. So when we talk about fiscal impact, and I understand the way the bill was written. I'm sorry, the fiscal note was written because of course it did not take into account the people that are going to be paying. And in both this bill and the other bill, there's nothing in the bill that says that universities may not increase tuition to balance this out. Now, I would be fine with that amendment, because otherwise the message we're sending out is, yes, there's a very good chance we're going to again increase the cost to go to college in the state of Maryland. And I don't know it again. I apologize for not being at some of these hearings. Trying to let you guys do your thing, but I just don't want to. I thought I'd be remiss by not pointing out what I believe is the obvious. And I understand just because they have the right to collective bargain, that doesn't mean they will. But I don't know what magical world that's in, because I've never seen that not happen, especially if they're asking for it. And secondly, there's to argue, well, we don't know what they're going to ask for. The guarantee is nobody's going to ask for what they have or less. So they're going to ask for more, ergo, there is going to be a fiscal hit on and I guess the universities, and much like tariffs, I don't believe they're not going to pass this on. So my first question is there a way to make this where they can't pass it on? Because the messaging isn't great to say, and we're going to hear it on the floor. We're going to hear it from Republicans. No offense to the Republicans here, because it's my issue as well, is that passing this bill will increase the cost of education in Maryland. And we already have a crazy cost right now. And is there a way to have something in there that guarantees that when these things pass, that it will not be passed on to the individuals who have to attend that school?
Yeah, I mean, so Delegate, that's an excellent question and an excellent point. I mean, obviously, conversations around public sector collective bargaining are a little different than the considerations are a little different sometimes than they are with private sector. A couple of things I'll say. I do not know off the top of my head. I believe that Hopkins, Tyler, maybe you know the answer to this. I believe that Hopkins has the
They
ability
do.
to, they already do collectively bargain for their grad students. So this bill obviously wouldn't impact that. But Hopkins has it. They have chosen obviously to do, what they
But
do
but they
on,
also have that $2 billion endowment, and my daughter goes there, so I don't
right.
disagree. Again,
No,
that's
well, but what I was going to say is, ultimately the buck stops for the university system's budget with the General Assembly. We ultimately have authority to approve their budgets, which include any tuition increases or decreases. There's a variety.
no,
There's a
no. This is important because this is what I
Yeah.
don't know, and I know from your prior nerd experience that you do, which is why I'm bringing it up now. Because what you're saying, and we can say on the floor, is that while this can pass, and possibly the other one, that we control whether they can raise tuition for my daughter, because most likely she's going to skip MIT and go to Maryland next year. And that's what I want to be able to say. I do not have
Yes.
a problem with these bills. And I know I come off as a villain to the labor side, which is great. I come off to a villain to everybody. But you understand my point and the importance. So what you're telling me is that they can't raise tuition, and I'm going to take you on your word because I trust you. But the only way that they can raise tuition rates to our students, in-state students, is to go through us.
So I don't want to misspeak, Tyler. Maybe you can correct me on this one if I'm wrong. The tuition package is included in the overall university system's budget, which while there may be a formal mechanism for them to raise tuition without the General Assembly's approval, it is part of their collective budget. That calculation, tuition goes into the calculation that the university system makes each year when they come to the General Assembly for whatever ask or the overall calculation of their budget. And so if the General Assembly feels like, or the governor feel like the university system and the individual institutions are doing something that they do not support, at the end of the day, it is on us to approve their budget. And so while again, there may be a formal mechanism within the Board of Regents that I don't want to misspeak on for them to do it, their overall budget package gets approved in the General Assembly and by the governor each year.
And Tyler, it's not that I don't trust Jared, but I don't. Now, do you agree with him?
I'm double checking that as quickly as I
Because
can.
you guys understand my point here, right? I don't want to put something out there when the messaging could be very clear that we do not care whether the rate, whether the costs go up per student, and that knowing right now what we're dealing with as a nation and the defunding of our schools and losing federal monies already, that we're going to do something that will have an effect on my constituency, myself included, when it comes to passing these bills. Because yeah, the messaging has to be clear that we can protect you. We can stop these the tuition rates from going up, and that's what I want to know. Or are they going to be able to backdoor it? Because I know that you, Jared, I know you guys when you were on your other committee, we gave them our tax money to run the school, but they still, in addition to our tax money, charge exorbitant rates to attend.
Well, and I'll say this, I mean, it's been a huge priority of the General Assembly, obviously, to make huge investments into the university system. And I mean, we've been able to keep, traditionally costs have been, I mean, especially for large state institutions of, similar quality, I think Maryland is one of the more affordable. And we've been able to keep tuition from increasing. It's been sort of locked in at 2%. Again, I am 98% sure that again, a tuition increase would have to be factored into our budget. I just don't know if there's some technicality among Board of Regents policy that would allow the Board of Regents to do it, sort of like an emergency provision that we have in law around the Board of Public Works and budget hits. I will say this, I don't think the university and in good faith in the work that we've done with these labor unions, nobody is trying to put the universities out of business. Nobody is trying to, dramatically reduce the number of graduate students. I think in this instance, it is very much about working conditions and having a seat at
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
table.
Like again, that's what I'm saying. I don't have a problem with the logic behind the bill. I'm worried that the outcome may be something that we don't want, don't see coming. And I just want some kind of understanding, again, never being on approach, that we can still protect, especially in state,
Yep.
from these exorbitant rates that we're paying.
Yeah. Tyler, were you able to get an official answer? If not, we can, Delegate Wilson, we can get you one by tomorrow, certainly,
Yeah.
or later this afternoon.
Yep.
But
I'm not trying to drag the bill down,
no, no,
guys.
no.
Yeah, sorry, my screen's having a little trouble loading. Here we go. Um, the Board of Regents approves or disapproves tuition increases. and revenues are not always part of the state appropriation.
See, and so, Jared, my question is that, do you understand my point?
Yeah,
Because
I
knowing
mean,
that,
again, I will be honest with you, in our conversations on the budget, while again, it officially maybe Board of Regents approval, it is a factor in how we always considered when I was part of that process, and I believe that's how the governor's team looks at it as well when putting their initial budget together. It is something certainly that we all factor into, and I think it is a fluid conversation, even though the official mechanism to raise tuition may come through the Board of Regents.
and so that 2% that you were talking about that we've held it down to, that's something that you believe, regardless of what bills we pass, we can still do that.
I mean, I don't want to, I mean, we have the fiscal situation we're currently in, so I can't guarantee that, but I know that's a priority for many of us.
You see my point, right? I don't, when this gets out, depending on how we model it and answer the questions, it could come off, it may not look great. And especially if it does have that bad impact. So I'm concerned of the messaging and of the impact. And it sounds like the impact may be controlled, so the messaging has to be clear. Now, again, that's just my 2 cents. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Delegate Terrazas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to, so first of all, I certainly agree with the concern about tuition, as a mother of young adults. That is something foremost on my mind. But I also want to point out, like in terms of affordability, in terms of people's ability to live and spend in our economy, these folks are also people living, the graduate assistants are also people living and spending in our economy. And so I don't think the affordability conversation is just a one way. It is a tough one all around, but the benefits of having workers who are treated well and given a living, a decent wage, or can at least bargain for a wage, I think is kind of important from my perspective.
Thank you, Delegate Terraza. Delegate Stewart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just wanted to take this affordability issue that Delegate Wilson has raised seriously, because I think it's an extremely good point, and I think the committee and the subcommittee in particular benefits from Delegate Wilson's expertise in this area, especially just as we kind of get ready for the floor. I did dive into this issue last night because I share those concerns. Let's see, am I frozen? Okay, no. So I found a couple of studies on this that, obviously anyone can have a study, right? So I'm not saying these are dispositive, but they did make me feel better. And I think it could also make other people feel better when this gets to the floor. So, and I'm happy to share this with the subcommittee. So first, the most widely cited analysis of this issue comes from two economists, Daniel Douglas and Ronald Ehrenberg. They work through what's called the Cornell University School of Industrial and Labor Relations, and they looked at unionized grad assistants across a bunch of major universities. And they found that, yes, unionization is associated with moderate increases in grad worker stipends, but they did not find any evidence of broader institutional disruption or any major structural cost increases. The second most cited study is by professor named Julius Getman, which was published in the Yale Law Journal. They also looked at graduate employee unions and found that collective bargaining did improve compensation for grad workers. It did improve workplace protections, but educational outcomes, that's what this study was about, educational outcomes and academic relationships and also budgetary issues were all largely unchanged from unionization. And then and lastly, and I think because this is a kind of a broader point that Delegate Wilson raised, it's really important, like tuition increases are insane right now. I mean, I'm having to put my children are not quite as old as Delegate Wilson's, but I'm having to put money into a 529 as I assume, Mr. Chairman, you are as well. And it's crazy the projections of basically what tuition is going to cost by the time my kids are ready to go to college. But I think one reason we shouldn't be too worried about this bill is because there was a really interesting research from an organization called the Delta Cost Project that looked at the share of university spending devoted to instruction. And they found that it's basically been stable over time, including at Maryland institutions. The share that's been spent on teachers of all varieties has actually not changed during this era of very, very high tuition increases, because mostly that money is going to administrative, I would argue bloat, but administrative expansion and also facilities and capital projects. So I think that, I mean, it's a little bit neither here nor there, but I think it does give us at least a little bit of comfort with this bill that we're not necessarily doing something that's been the core driver of the tuition increases that I think we should all rightfully be worried about. And then lastly, I'll make a final just point on the bill, which is that graduate assistants themselves are already part of essentially like a cost control regime in schools. Like graduate assistants are one of the reasons that we've been able to keep tuition increases as affordable as we have, because they teach discussion sections, they run labs, they support research. It costs far lower than what it would take to hire additional full-time faculty. So I think the argument in favor of this bill that I would make is that improving stability and transparency for those workers will help keep grad workers there, and they can help us by being happy and staying and not having turnover. They can keep this affordable, because if we don't have grad workers who feel comfortable, we're going to have to hire full-time staff who are way more expensive to replace them. So those are the points that I would make, but I'm with Delegate Wilson for sure that we have to, as a committee, I think remain laser focused on what we can do to make sure people can go to college affordably in the state.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those comments, Delegate Stewart. Thank you for sharing the research. I mean, and obviously this bill was discussed in concert with with the Appropriations Committee that has oversight over the higher ed budget. And I will just say, there's a number in the bill file. You can see there's a number of public universities that have had graduate student collective bargaining for many years, and some of whom have cheaper in-state tuition rates than Maryland does. But I think you're spot on. That is certainly a concern, something that we take very seriously. We took very seriously when I was on the Appropriations Committee, and have had as part of the conversation of this bill for the last couple of years as we've considered it. Delegate Wilson, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, and again, so do we have an idea about the number? And I'm sure it would vacillate. Do we have about the number of people we're talking about here?
Yeah, so I mean, the two campuses, frankly, that have the highest number of graduate students are the University of Maryland, College Park, unsurprisingly, and then pretty far behind is University of Maryland, Baltimore County. Collectively, that's about maybe 5,500, and then there's a smattering across the system in other institutions. And then I don't have the number readily available for Morgan. Would probably be the other big one.
You're fine. These are, again, I'm really just preparing for the messaging. That's why I'm asking these questions, because and there are other states that do this.
Yep. I can give you a list of.
You don't have to do it now, but I'm just
Yeah.
asking these questions
Yep.
about other states, be able to quote the impacts, because again, Delegate Tross, I understand your point about working conditions, but also say in my prior career, when I was a chair, we would have, these working conditions for like installing underground power lines. And there's no question that those, by putting, collective bargaining or prevailing wage, things of that nature, it increased the cost of the project. Ergo, it increased the cost of electricity. So I'm always saying that to make sure that we have our ducks in order on the impact as much as we can see as far as the numbers that we're talking about. Everything, I appreciate Delegate Vaughn for highlighting my intellectual laziness by not doing any research myself. But I really appreciate, what he was talking about. I just want to make sure that, again, the messaging is that we know, Delegate Tross, we know the reason, we know why it's all good. But in this current economy, making sure that we're, not putting anybody at risk. That's why the other states, Vaughn, your research on, the de minimis impact, that's just all very important, because we're going to have to tell our constituents this as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Wilson. No, this is very robust conversation, and I think these issues are real. Again, as we balance fiscal issues across the state government, these are all things we have to factor into our decisions. So with that, just put one last call out. Any other discussion or questions on the bill?
I just have one more, and it's a question. So I would argue or posit, Vaughn, for you posit the other possible issue, and I don't know if you can get research about what other states or colleges have done on the actual reduction of positions due to increased benefits and cost, because that's also very real. Because it's not only like I said, if they're not going to do the pass through, Are they going to cut positions depending on the benefits are asked for? Do we have any information on how much, how many, what the cuts would look like, or, the reduction of these grad assistants positions? Do we have any examples in, I don't know, other colleges of once this was done, the impact on the number of available positions? And mind you, again, it's neither here nor there. It's, again, I've said this before, you follow your treasure, you find your heart. If this is something, Delegate Trasa, that we believe in, and this is what we do. The problem is, normally the we is us as taxpayers, ergo we, the General Assembly, versus, again, we, everybody who pays to go to these Maryland colleges. Because I'll be honest, University of Maryland isn't what it used to be as far as everybody used to be able to go there. The acceptance rate is crazy. You have the GPA that you need now to go to a Maryland State School, University of Maryland, is like a 4.2, which is ridiculous. And in the affordability. So to go back to what do you believe? Do we have a projection of the possible reduction in positions if this bill passes?
If Delegate Stewart, you have an answer on that. I don't think that we have a projection. I mean, it's sort of one of those,
We know Vaughn has the answer.
how do you prove a negative? I mean, again, the cost estimates on this have been fairly minimal and the impact has been fairly minimal. So
I'm just talking about the positions. Is there, and I'm sure in other states or other schools, there would be at least a demonstrative, if they're not going to pass it on, reduction in positions. I just want to know, the little quick research I did was like 30%. And again, we do what we want to do here. I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I mean, again, I think it's part of how you would negotiate these agreements, but Delegate Stewart, go ahead.
Yeah, I do have part of the answer here. So I looked into this issue as well last night. I also, I think the fiscal note itself actually says that part of the reason that the fiscal note drafters thought that maybe the cost difference here would be minimal is because they anticipated that some of the assistantships would be reduced. And so I think the best study on this actually came last year from the American Mathematical Society, and they looked at graduate funding pressures at research universities, specifically in math departments. And they found that when universities increased graduate stipends substantially, which sometimes did follow unionization, but sometimes they increased for other reasons, that some departments at universities did reduce the cohort sizes slightly to basically balance the budget. And that is one of the reasons that I think the costs don't balloon, is because sometimes they do respond by cutting assistantships. Now, I will note that the report said that the stipend increases, which, by the way, the stipend increases they studied were big ones, only led to, quote unquote, a small decrease in the number of students funded in only some programs. So I think based on that, it's not a definitive answer, but based on that, I think my best guess of the answer is that yes, there has been evidence in other places where the number of assistantships has been reduced, but no, it doesn't appear that it's super drastic or any sort of massive slashing. And so I think we do have a bit of a policy choice here, where is it better to have slightly fewer assistantships that are funded better and where, the grad workers get better benefits and better protections, or is it better to have slightly more without those safeguards? I would vote, obviously I'm going to be voting for the bill, and I would say the former is better, but I agree with Delegate Wilson that it's important that we understand the trade-offs and understand what the research is before this heads to the floor.
Yeah, no, Delegate Stewart, appreciate that. And I think, Delegate Wilson, the other point I was trying to make is I think that is part of a conversation. I mean, we don't expect these negotiations if they are able to collectively bargain, we don't expect those negotiations to happen in a vacuum. And I think, knowing how labor unions tend to, have these conversations, especially in this sector, I think it would be a very open and reasonable conversation of, hey, these are the budget pressures we have. This is what ultimately might come out of it. I think most folks are interested in negotiating in good faith. Obviously, can't make that blanket statement across the board, but nobody's interested in putting their institution out of business. Nobody's interested in putting a whole bunch of folks out of jobs. It's about if the money's not there, I think most people are reasonable and willing to say, if you've developed that kind of a relationship and trust of doing what's best for the overall institution, while also trying to make sure you're doing right by your employees as well.
And again, these are all just things I hope that we can get in front of as far as explaining it in hearing or on the floor when it comes to the impacts, just the overall intellectually honest impacts of the bill. And again, I knew Vaughn had the answer just because I know Vaughn. And I agree. If this is what we want to do, again, this is what we do. I just want to make sure we, number one, get in front of it. We're able to explain ourselves. and it becomes a principled argument and principled vote. But with
Yeah.
just y'all as a body need to make sure that these things are articulated properly when the bill comes to the floor, so we can answer questions, even the ones that aren't going to be answered or they're not going to be brought up at that time. They will be brought up by our constituents or by the news or by Fox 45 or something. So we should make sure that we make it clear that we've looked into all these issues and this is what we found, just for clarification.
Correct. Appreciate that. All right. Anyone else? All right. With that, is there a motion to move the bill?
So moved.
Second.
Excellent. All right. The House Bill 141 has been moved and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. I don't know that we need to do a roll call, I think. All right. All those opposed?
Aye.
All right. We'll record Delegate Tomlinson and Delegate Schmidt.
So
Right.
if I would have voted against it, the bill would die.
I am not 100% sure of our committee rules.
I don't
Tyler, I
either.
think just don't recommend, it has no recommendation, I
I
think.
know,
Yeah,
I'm just messing with you, buddy. Don't worry.
I know. I
Doug
know.
Wilson, you still have time to change. You can be the deciding vote.
To explain my vote,
Yes, go ahead, Delegate Schmidt.
I kind of agree with the long deliberate discussion we had on rising costs. As the father of a son who's going through the college application process right now, and comparing state schools in the South versus state schools here in Maryland, it's actually cheaper for him to attend a Southern school in Alabama, Mississippi, Kentucky, South Carolina, North Carolina than it is for him to go to College Park right now. And so I don't want to see this increase. I understand the need for it. I believe that the collective bargaining, will have an impact on these jobs. My fear is that we keep adding cost and that we're losing the value of the state school in Maryland. And we can look at enrollment and really see how many out-of-state people are coming from basically the Northeast to attend our state school. And it's really disenfranchising being a proud Terp and being a proud Marylander. And that's my biggest concern with some of these bills. And thank you for allowing me that opportunity to explain my vote.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, again, we have a robust system of institutions. I just want to remind folks, it's not just College Park. University, St. Mary's is, I think, one of the best values of a liberal, quote unquote, liberal arts school is the category it falls into. Is probably one of the best values in the nation, better than many private schools that are double or triple the cost. We've got institutions across the state beyond College Park. I mean, I hear sort of similar concerns from folks, Delegate Wilson, that you raised, that it's harder and harder for some Maryland residents to get into the school just because of the academic standards, which is really great. But I always remind people that College Park's not the only. I mean, it's our flagship institution, but we've got 12 other institutions across the state that do incredible work and are incredible values as well.
If I may, I just explain my vote. The problem going through the same thing that Delegate Schmidt is that he's not incorrect. The problem is you'd have to be in Mississippi or Arkansas, and I think the balance there makes. I understand why they're cheaper because you'd actually have to be in those states. So
that's why Delegate Stewart fled, right?
But yes, I get it.
I would also just counsel anyone against going to school in Mississippi. I think both the Rebels and the Bulldogs are on a downward trajectory. You want to make sure you're going to a real playoff competitor school if you're going to.
On that note, all right, I think we're good. Thank you all for your robust participation.
Journalize those remarks. You got it. Journalize the remarks.
We'll leave that to the good counsel here. All right, I think we're good for our meeting. Thank you again for the robust conversation and debate. And then I think I will see you all in about 50 minutes in committee. Thanks, everybody.